Arriving at central Wisconsin's Sandhill Wildlife Area, one first notices the 9-foot high fence enclosing these 9,150 acres. Researchers in the 1960s experimented with different heights of fence here to determine that 9 feet is needed to keep out deer. The parking lot's garden proves a fine place to find the first butterfly of the day, a northern broken dash nectaring on bergamot. Visitors also have a chance to practice plant identification with the prairie garden just outside the useful restrooms. I remember that the drive is long, 14 miles with frequent stops, and I better make a pit stop. Then I see a monarch working over the butterfly bush. After signing into the logbook, noting my activity as butterflying, I make my way through the gate, closing it securely behind me. It feels like I've either stepped back in time or escaped to another world. The journey begins as asphalt makes way to dirt and crushed rock as I travel into one of Wisconsin's premier butterfly hotspots, following the fence that separates me from the civilization to the first stop of the day, Flowage A. Today's Sandhill was once filled by Glacial Lake, Wisconsin. The topography is pretty flat, allowing for the slow motion of water over and through the earth. Songbirds find its modern waters a sanctuary and call out their praises. Sandhill, an outdoor laboratory for wildlife management, features a series of wetland habitats divided by earthen berms. Each seems to offer home to a variety of creatures. At Flowage A, I quickly find a Dion Skipper. Unlike other places where that one butterfly represents the day's findings of Dions, the next clump of flowering plants present several more of the larger skippers. Not having to worry about losing my one example, I can study the butterflies and notice their behavior. More black dashes mix in, seeming to prefer the Monarda, as do a few Mulberry Wings, sporting their telltale blonde airplanes soaring through mahogany. Some find it ironic that the Mulberry Wing is a weak flyer, but with all these flowering plants in a thicket of sedge, how far could it want to travel? And then I start to find two-spotted skippers, white underparts hiding beneath their large brownish-orange wings. I've walked 50 feet and I've already had a good day of butterflying. Walking the length of the dike, I find a crazed red admiral, an eyed brown, many dragonflies, and more sedge skippers, and the first Acadian hairstreak of the day. Time to flit to Flowage B. The Bullgrass Loop is a trail around another wetland. Today, the absence of mosquitoes makes the site atypically tranquil. I won't be stopping long, reminding myself of the extended journey ahead. Walking through the woods, I notice a clump of wild lupin, host plant to a butterfly we'll see later, now adding a botanical bonus to this video. Coming into full sun, I see the umbels of swamp milkweed serving as O'Hare Jr. to the swarms of flyers. Unlike past years, though, I see that 2023's months of drought have decreased the number of inflorescences and shortened the time of flowering. Many of the milkweeds are dropping flowers when they should normally be at their peak. Here's another botanical bonus. Round-leaved sundew, Drosera rotundifolia. Unlike the lupin, we don't want butterflies getting tangled up in those sticky hairs. Next stop, a field. This is our first stop at what I consider a typical Wisconsin habitat, a farm field that's been left alone for a few years. Common milkweed and bee balm attract the butterflies. Several common wood nymphs, monarchs, and a few rapidly cruising fritillaries. I find a camera-shy Edwards hairstreak, a Delaware skipper, and the first dun skipper of the day. I make a quick stop at another wetland searching the milkweeds and Monarda for butterflies, a little surprised at the paucity of individuals compared to prior years. Then it's off to lunch with the bison. Unlike Yellowstone's bison, these mighty herbivores stay safely behind serious fencing with warnings to alarm even the least aware. You can look over their sizable paddock from the tower. I could make out a few chocolate-colored behemoths in the distance. The real treat, though, sits below. At first, many conclude that these butterflies are eastern-tailed blues without tails. They look quite similar to another species no longer found in Wisconsin, the northern blue. These are the ever-popular Karner Melissa Blues, who use that wild lupin seen earlier for their caterpillar food source. An endangered species, the Karners still do well in the badger state where we expend resources to monitor them and improve habitats. When on a field trip to Sandhill, we usually stop at the picnic tables here and dine. I'm running behind. There's a lot of the natural area to visit yet, so I eat on the run. I should note that I'm not making stops at shady forested spots, so I'm not tallying any of the commas or tortoiseshells that I know are here. It would be nice to live closer so that I had time to visit regularly and go into greater depth on the footpaths and other areas away from the road. Flowage G is our traditional location for finding the evasive bronze copper. I walk out in areas that are usually under a few inches of water but are almost dry this year, my feet sticking slightly in the mud. A Karner draws me out farther and my feet get wet, but no coppers. Along the road, 6 or so mourning cloaks congregate, but they aren't feeling particularly photogenic. Some of the plants look like they've been burned by chemicals, but I'm pretty sure they are victims of the drought, even though they are in a wetland. I did spy a bronze copper nectaring on this spreading dogbane. It flew off through this swampy area faster than I could follow. So imagine this image from somewhere else superimposed on this dogbane. Pretty big for a copper. I also run into the first human of the day, a birder who must have entered earlier in the morning. Not bad for a Friday. Then I'm off to the North Bluff Loop. Yes, I'm exhausted, but I'm moving on. Visitors have the option to cut off this loop and head back to the south road that leads to the exit. Along the loop, I come to Gallagher Marsh, the largest open wetland on the property, and the driest with water held back by the berm I drive over. Examining the wetter side, I found evidence that the water was about a foot lower than a normal year, evident by the staining on the rocks. I watched a red-spotted purple flitter through the grass and find another group of sedge skippers working the milkweeds. I'm feeling a sense of fatigue brought on by the overwhelming nature of seeing so many butterflies in such a short time. I have time for 2 more stops. At the road's north end, there's a restroom and a short trail to a tower one can climb to overlook the normally wet wetlands of Gallagher Marsh. This area has traditionally been a stop where we look for the variegated fritillary, a species that I've had minimal luck finding. Nothing changes today. I'll have to look for this elusive frit next time, hopefully after the land has had some rain. At my last stop for the day, the sign reads Prairie in Progress, which is just what Sandhill needs. I've seen woodland species, sedge species, marsh species, old field species, and of course the Karner Melissa Blues with their lupin fixation. A prairie, particularly a dry prairie, would offer more nectaries for grass skippers, coppers, and species like meadow fritillaries. Butterfly weed is one of the few plants in flower and seems to be the only magnet for butterflies. Numerous Edwards hairstreaks, a coral hairstreak, and there's a few skippers here as well. I will keep an eye on this area, expecting it to become a richer butterfly spot in a year or two when the prairie plants take off. It's been almost 6 hours when I arrive at the exit gate to the parking lot where I started. In the past, this parking area has had broadwing skippers and the rare Rickert's blue. Today, my final check discovers an Aphrodite fritillary and an Edwards hairstreak. I leave via Ball Road and witness the much larger state-managed wilderness area that's 10 times the size of Sandhill, the Sandhill Meadow Valley Work Unit, claimed to be the largest block of state-managed wildlife lands in Wisconsin. It's many miles before I find signs of civilization, power lines, heavy equipment, cranberry bogs, and I'm already thinking about my next trip to Sandhill.